I want you to stop what you're doing for a second. I mean, don't close your eyes if you're driving, obviously, but just take a look at the world around you. Now, I'm going to ask you a question that is going to sound deceptively, almost insultingly simple.
Uh-oh. I love when you start like this. That usually means we're about to get a headache.
Good headache. So here is the question. How do you know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that 2 plus 2 equals 4?
Yeah, it's the kind of question that makes you pause, isn't it? Because the immediate reaction is, well, I just know. It feels like asking how you know you're breathing.
Exactly. But how? Like, is that knowledge hardwired into your brain before you were even born? Sort of like pre-installed software that comes with a new laptop. Or did you only figure it out after you spent years as a toddler counting apples, fingers, and wooden blocks?
You've basically just walked us right into the classic battlefield of philosophy. And today, we aren't just observing the battle, we are stepping right into the crossfire. We're doing a deep dive into Chapter 5 of The Mental Unit of Existence by Abdul-Jabbar Al-Waily.
And let me tell you, Al-Waily isn't just rehashing old arguments here. He's looking at the heavyweights of history. We're talking Kant, Descartes, Locke, Spencer. And he's basically saying to all of them, you're all a little bit right, but you're mostly missing the point.
It really is a fascinating synthesis. He's tackling the core conflict between rationalism, which is the idea that knowledge is innate, and empiricism, the idea that knowledge comes purely from experience. But he proposes this third way to understand how the human mind grasps certainty.
So let's set the stage a bit. On one side of the ring, in the red corner, we have the rationalists. So that's Immanuel Kant and René Descartes. What is their pitch?
Their pitch is what we call innate ideas, or in the original text, fixtures. They argue that certain truths, specifically mathematical axioms, exist in the human mind independently of any experience. To them, the mind isn't empty when you're born. It comes with templates.
So to Descartes, 2 plus 2 equals 4 isn't something I learned by, counting rocks in the backyard. It's a truth that was already waiting in my head.
Precisely. Kant called these analytic judgments. He argued that the result is actually contained within the premise. Like, the concept of 7 is inherently locked inside the concept of 3 plus 4. You don't need to go outside into the physical world to verify it. It is a priori, which is Latin for prior to experience.
Right. That sounds convenient, but also kind of rigid. It implies that time, place, or circumstance can never change that fact.
And that is exactly their point. They would say that a straight line is the shortest distance between 2 points, and your mind knows this without you ever having to physically walk between 2 points to test it. It's an absolute unchangeable truth. It's not something you discovered, it's something you simply are.
Okay, so that's Team Rationalist. They say the software is pre-installed. In the blue corner, we have the empiricists, represented by John Locke. And I remember Locke from school. He's the blank slate guy, right?
That's him. Tabula rasa. Locke argues that the mind essentially has no original thoughts of its own. Everything, and he really means everything, enters through the senses. You see 2 apples, then 2 more apples, and your brain mixes and matches those sensory inputs to learn that there are 4 apples.
So for Locke, my brain is just an empty room, and the furniture only arrives when I open the window to the outside world.
That's a great analogy. For an empiricist, math isn't some divine truth. It's just a habit we picked up from looking at stuff for a long time.
But here is where I get stuck with Locke, and I think Al-Waily does too. If math is just something I learned by looking at physical objects, why does it feel so profoundly different from other things I've learned?
What do you mean by different?
Well, I've learned from experience that fire burns wood. But I can imagine a world, maybe a sci-fi universe, where fire doesn't burn wood. Maybe the wood is wet or the atmosphere is different. It feels probable, but not certain. But 2 plus 2 equals 4? I literally cannot imagine a universe where it equals 5. It just feels impossible.
You have just hit on Al-Waily's first major critique. He points out a glaring hole in Locke's theory. If all knowledge comes from the senses, why do we feel absolute certainty about math, but only probability about physical things?
Can you give me a deeper breakdown of that difference? Because it feels really central here.
Sure. Al-Waily distinguishes between logical certainty and empirical probability. Take the fire burning wood. We believe it because we've seen it happen, but that is an empirical judgment. It's possible, however unlikely, that in some future condition, fire might not burn wood. A prevention could occur.
Like heavy rain or a vacuum seal.
Exactly. But with 2 plus 2 equals 4, you are absolutely certain you cannot even imagine a universe where it equals 5. Al-Waily argues that Locke fails to explain why we have this double standard, why we trust math implicitly but have to constantly verify physical reality.
So we have a stalemate. The rationalists explain the certainty but can't really prove where the ideas come from physically. The empiricists explain the physical origin but can't account for the certainty.
Enter Herbert Spencer.
Ah, Spencer, the man who tried to use biology to solve a philosophy problem.
Right. Spencer tried to mediate this by bringing in evolution. He argued that these axioms, like math or logic, are habitual intuitions. Basically, because our human ancestors saw the sun rise every single day for millions of years, that repetition got hardwired into our genetics.
So it's like ancestral memory. We know the sun will rise because our great-great-great-grandparents saw it rise.
Exactly. He called them mental forms acquired by the species. It's like a groove worn into a rock by water. The water has flowed that way so many times, the rock just naturally channels it there.
Honestly, that sounds pretty plausible to me. It bridges the gap. Why does Al-Waily reject it?
Al-Waily's counterargument is incredibly sharp here. He asks us to look at the sun rising example again. Yes, the species has seen it for eons, we expect it to happen, but does that make it a logical certainty?
Well, no. I mean, the sun could explode, an asteroid could hit the Earth and stop the rotation. It's highly unlikely, but not impossible.
Exactly. It is still just a high probability. It is not an absolute truth. Al-Waily argues that if math were just a biological habit like Spencer suggests, we would treat it like the weather. We would think 2 + 2 is probably 4, unless something weird happens today.
But we don't do that. We know it's 4.
Correct. Al-Waily argues that relying on habit or biological evolution doesn't yield that absolute, unshakable certainty we feel about mathematics. If math were just a biological habit, we would doubt it every once in a while, just like we doubt the weather.
Okay, so Al-Waily has dismantled the biological argument. He's poked holes in Locke and questioned the magic of the rationalists.
Yeah.
So what is his solution? How does he actually solve the puzzle?
This is the core of the chapter. Al-Waily proposes a synthesis. He agrees with the empiricists that the data comes from the senses. We start by seeing physical objects. We are born blank. But he agrees with the rationalists that the result is absolute.
How can it be both? That sounds like having your cake and eating it too.
Through the mechanism of abstraction.
Okay, let's unpack abstract deduction. How does this machinery work?
Think of it like a refinery. Al-Waily says the mind receives raw ore from the senses. Say 2 rocks and 2 rocks. That's the raw data. It's heavy, it has color, it has texture.
Right, it's physical, it's messy.
The mind then performs an operation. It abstracts. It strips away the rockness of the objects. It deletes the gray color, the rough texture, the weight, the specific location. It filters out everything physical until all that is left is the pure, distilled concept of the number 2.
So we are literally deleting the physical world from the equation.
Yes, and this is the key. Once the concept is abstract, it is detached from reality. And because it is detached, it is flawless. 2 + 2 = 4 is an error-free calculation specifically because it no longer relies on your eyes or the physical world. It has entered the realm of the mind, which is perfect.
This leads to my absolute favorite part of the chapter. He uses this really vivid example to explain the difference between the perfect mind and flawed reality, the drunken vision.
It's a great image. Al-Waily contrasts the abstract calculation with physical reality. He asks, if you rely purely on your eyes, your empirical tools, can you ever be 100% certain?
He asks, if you see 2 men standing next to 2 other men, can you be certain there are 4 men?
And his answer is a hard no.
Which feels totally counterintuitive at first. I can count. I see 4 guys.
But Al-Waily lists all the ways your senses can lie to you. Double vision, what doctors call diplopia, drunkenness, poisoning, hallucinations, mirrors, or even just mental delusions. If you are heavily intoxicated, you might see 8 men.
So the empirical judgment relying on my retina is subject to those preventions we talked about. I might see 8 men when there are only 4. But the abstract judgment, the concept that 2 + 2 = 4, remains perfect in my head, even if I'm drunk.
Exactly. The math in your head doesn't get drunk. The concept of 2 doesn't get double vision. Al-Waily writes that we can never be fully certain about the physical world because there are always potential interruptions. Fog, distance, bad eyesight. But abstract deduction has no interruptions. It is a closed loop of pure logic.
That distinction is actually incredibly helpful. It explains perfectly why we trust math more than we trust our own eyes.
And he takes this distinction to a mind-bending level when he brings in geometry and the shape of the Earth. This is where he really shows that our mental software is running a completely different program than the physical universe.
Like the parallel lines problem. I remember learning this in geometry class.
So consider the axiom. Parallel lines never meet. In your mind, in that abstract perfect space, that is absolutely true. That is Euclidean geometry.
But Al-Waily points out that on Earth, that's a lie.
Correct. In the physical reality, parallel lines meet all the time. Think of lines of longitude on a globe. They are parallel at the equator, running straight up. But what happens when they get to the North Pole?
They crash right into each other.
They converge. Or think of railroad tracks. If you look down a long stretch of track, visually, the tracks appear to touch in the distance due to perspective.
So the statement parallel lines never meet is true in the abstract world of the mind, but completely false in the physical world we actually live in.
And he takes it a step further with triangles. In your mind, the angles of a triangle always add up to 180 degrees. That's a rule. But if you draw a massive triangle on the globe connecting Cairo, New York, and Moscow, the curvature of the Earth makes the angles add up to more than 180 degrees.
That is wild. It's like our brains are forcing a flat grid onto a round world.
Al-Waily explicitly references Einstein here. He notes that Einstein showed us reality is relative and curved. Space-time itself is curved, but our minds are stubborn. We maintain a Euclidean flatness. We impose a flat, logical grid onto a curved, relativistic universe.
So we're basically walking around with these perfect straight-line tools in a wobbly, curved world.
Precisely. And that confirms Al-Waily's main synthesis. The certainty comes from the mind's abstraction, not from the world itself. The world is the drunk one, the mind is the sober one.
I want to shift gears to the other big topic in this chapter because Al-Waily applies this exact same abstraction logic to how we identify things. The concept of universals.
Universals, or kuliat.
Yeah.
This is the question of how do I know what a tree is? Not the specific oak tree in front of me, but the general category of tree.
And once again, we have to talk about Plato. We can't really have a philosophy discussion without him showing up.
Plato had a very famous theory called the forms. He argued that there is a universal tree, a perfect spiritual template, existing in our souls before we are born. When we see a real tree, we recognize it because it matches that internal template.
So again, it's the pre-installed software argument. I know a tree because I already have the blueprint in my soul.
Yes, but Al-Waily rejects this entirely. He argues that universals are acquired, not innate, and he uses a fascinating analogy to explain how we build them, the composite photograph.
I really love this analogy. It feels very modern for when this was written. Break it down for us. How do we build a universal?
Imagine you take a photo of a tree. Your memory stores it on a transparent slide. Then you see a second tree. It's slightly different. Maybe it's shorter or has different leaves. Your memory layers that second slide over the first one.
Like stacking transparent slides on an old overhead projector.
Exactly. Now imagine doing that with 1,000 trees. The specific details, the crooked branch on tree number 5, the yellow leaves on tree number 20, they all blur out. They basically cancel each other out because they don't match.
But the similarities.
The similarities reinforce each other. The trunk, the branches, the general shape, those lines get darker and darker with every layer. The result is a universal tree. It's not a magical template from God. It's just a blurry average of every tree you've ever seen.
So the universal is a neutral composite. It's basically a mental average.
Yes. And Al-Waily offers a very practical proof for this, which he calls the first tree argument.
Ah, this is a logic check.
He says, if Plato were right and we had an innate template, a child seeing a tree for the very first time should instantly recognize it. They should say, ah, yes, a tree. I know this form.
But anyone who has spent time with a toddler knows that is definitely not true.
Exactly. A toddler, or a person regaining their sight after being blind, doesn't know what they're looking at. Is it a predator? Is it food? Is it a static object? They have to learn the category. This proves the universal is built later after experience, not installed at birth.
That makes so much sense. And he mentions that this universal image in our heads is actually kind of ghostly.
It is. He points out that if we could project our mental universal horse into reality, it would look like a ghost. It wouldn't have a specific color because it's a mix of brown, black, and white horses. It wouldn't have a specific size. It lacks the specific details that make something real.
There's one exception he mentions, though. The sun.
Ah, yes. The universal sun. Al-Waily notes we actually don't have a composite concept for the sun.
Then why not?
Because there is only one. We don't need to layer multiple images because we don't have multiple examples. Our concept of the sun is specific, not universal, because in our experience, it's entirely unique. This reinforces his theory. No multiple examples, no composite image.
Before we wrap up, there is one area where Al-Waily actually agrees with Spencer and the evolutionists. And honestly, it surprised me a bit. Morality.
It is a bit of a surprise twist. He spends the whole chapter arguing that math isn't biological, but then he says ethics are.
So he completely distinguishes between mathematical axioms and moral axioms.
Right. Mathematical axioms like 2 + 2 = 4 are abstract and absolute, but moral axioms like justice is good or killing is bad are driven by general interest and survival.
So we think killing is bad strictly because it helps the species survive.
Correct. It's evolutionary. And he uses a somewhat gruesome example to prove it. The fish.
The fish example. Lay it on us.
He says, imagine a species of fish that survives by eating each other. For them, survival depends on predation. If they could think, their moral axiom would be eating your neighbor is good.
Right. To a fish, our human morality of don't kill would seem entirely illogical. It would go against their survival.
Exactly. This proves that moral axioms aren't abstract, mathematical truths. They are biological strategies. If our biology were different, our morality would be different. But 2 + 2 = 4 would still be true, even for the cannibal fish.
That is a lot to process. It really separates the universe into these two distinct buckets: the abstract, perfect truths of the mind, like math, and the messy, biological, curved realities of the world, like morality and physics.
That is the very essence of Al-Waily's synthesis.
So let's bring this all home. If you, the listener, take one thing away from this deep dive into Al-Waily's mental unit of existence, what should it be?
The main takeaway is that Al-Waily has constructed a model of the mind that respects both our biology and our intellect. We start as a blank slate. That's the empiricism part. We engage with the world through our messy, fallible senses. But then we have this incredible ability to abstract. We strip the data of its physical flaws to create a world of pure reason.
It's kind of empowering, isn't it? It openly admits that our senses might lie to us, that we might be drunk on reality, but our capacity for reason allows us to touch perfection.
It highlights the stark distinction between the perfection of our thoughts and the messiness of our reality. We can be completely certain about the math, but we must always be humble about our observations of the physical world.
I want to leave you with a provocative thought that came to me while reading the section on the composite photograph.
Go for it.
If our concepts of things like a human or a tree or a house are just blurry composite memories of things we've seen before, does that mean we are fundamentally incapable of recognizing something truly new?
That is a profound question.
Think about it. If an alien life form appeared, or a totally new color, or something that just didn't fit into any of our existing layers, would our brains even be able to process it? Or would we simply fail to see it because we have no composite to match it against?
It definitely suggests that our knowledge is limited by our history. We can only know what we have seen enough times to build a ghost of.
Something to mull over the next time you look at a tree. Or check your math. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Al-Waily's mind.
It was a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.